So it can definitely be confusing for people that Hanukkah and Christmas fall around the same time of year. When I was growing up in Canada, I was often asked something like, Hanukkah, that's kind of like your Christmas, right? In the diaspora, it felt a little bit like Hanukkah was kind of a consolation prize for us Jewish kids who didn't get Christmas. And while Hanukkah has no obvious connection to Christmas, it is, in fact, a holiday with profound connection between Jews and Christians. The events of Hanukkah are described in the books of 1st and 2nd Maccabees, which are not part of the Jewish Bible. Not only are 1st and 2nd Maccabees part of the Catholic Bible, but we also know that Jesus himself marked Hanukkah, as recounted in the Gospel of John, chapter 10. So, paradoxically, Hanukkah is a holiday that's not biblical for Jews and is biblical for Christians. Yet Jews celebrate Hanukkah and Christians do not. In the year 175 before the Common Era, Judea was invaded by the Seleucid Emperor Antiochus Epiphanes IV. He outlawed fundamental Jewish practices and violated the temple with a statue of Zeus and the sacrifice of impure animals on the altar. The Maccabees arose in response, and this group of Jewish guerrilla warriors undertook an uprising led by Mattatyahu and his sons. Now that revolt was successful, and by the year 165, the temple had been recaptured and cleaned with a new altar dedicated, fit for sacrifices to the God of Israel. But one problem remained. According to Exodus chapter 27, lamps were to burn all night in the temple, every night, lit from pure consecrated olive oil. And only one such jar of oil could be found, enough for only one day. Yet that oil, the story goes, lasted for 8 full days, the length of time that it took to bring more pure oil to Jerusalem. So in short, Hanukkah is a celebration of 2 things at once: a military victory and a spiritual victory, people's triumph over the bad guys, and the people's quest for holiness. Now today, when we celebrate Hanukkah, we light an additional candle each night until a full blaze of 8 candles lights up the winter darkness. But there's no necessary reason for doing it this way. In fact, the 2 most important rabbinic schools of thought disagreed about how to light Hanukkah lights. In contrast to what we might take for granted, Beit Shammai insisted that we begin the holiday with 8 candles and light 1 less each night. His argument was based on a model that sought to fill in the sacrifices missed during the war. Beit Hillel, on the other hand, championed the format that we're familiar with today, starting with a single light and increasing each night. The argument of Beit Hillel was based on a completely different way of seeing an orientation, not backward to a historical event of military conquest, as was Beit Shammai, but rather towards something outside of history, something extra-historical, supra-historical, that of holiness. Shammai is focused on the defeat of the enemy, and like all historical events, its impact, like the Hanukkah lights, diminished over time. Hillel is focused instead on the holiness that resulted from this military victory, and that just as holiness increased with the rededication of the altar, so should the lighting reflect an increase in holiness. According to this way of thinking, Hanukkah points us not just to a single historical miracle, but to an ongoing supra-historical one. Because while the Maccabees make for an exciting story, and while that victory was tremendously important for freedom of Jewish practice, its impact did indeed diminish over time, more than diminished. It ended up with the reign of some of the most corrupt and power-hungry rulers in the form of the Hasmonean dynasty, whose infighting and ambition invited Rome in to rule Judea from the year 63 BCE as a protectorate. Power corrupts unless it is guided by holiness. Human power must be subservient to holiness, to the guidance of God. There is no doubt today we live in a dark time surrounded by lawlessness and cruelty, human power running out of control, and we are ready to do something, anything, to make it stop. Our souls, our hearts are eager, desperate, but our hands are not able to do as much as our souls demand. Here we might be guided by the words of Rav Kook, the first Ashkenazi chief rabbi of British Mandate Palestine. He wrote, "The purely righteous do not complain of the dark, but increase the light. They do not complain of evil, but increase justice. They do not complain of heresy, but increase faith. They do not complain of ignorance, but increase wisdom." And here, I think, here is the power of Hanukkah, to increase in holiness, to increase in faith, to increase in justice and wisdom. This is our path toward cooperating with the ongoing supra-historical story that God is writing with us.